Okay, well, welcome everybody to this session. You are now in the Musser Learning Lab. If you are here for this particular presentation, this presentation is The Curious Case of the Missing Ladies' Toilet. My name is Anna Davis. I am the editor of the Chronicles of Oklahoma, and I'm here to introduce your presenter today. Mike Kurtok was educated at the University of Oklahoma, graduating with a Master's of Architecture degree in 1982. He learned his trade while employed by several large architecture firms, gaining a wide variety of experience and increasing responsibilities, and established his own firm in 1999, where he specializes in historic preservation and renovation projects. So if you would please welcome Mr. Mike Kurtok.
Well, good afternoon. And I have for you today a mystery, which I call, if I can get this to work, there we go, The Curious Case of the Missing Ladies' Toilet Room. And this is the scene of the mystery. It is the Casa Grande Hotel in Elk City. The Casa Grande was built in 1928, and as you may have just noticed, the roof line was changed quite a bit. It was modernized around 1950, as near as I could determine. The storefront here also changed over time, but the hotel still has quite a bit of its original fabric. It is at the corner of Main Street, which runs along the front here, and 3rd Street, or 3rd Avenue, which is Route 66. And the Main Street frontage was given over to retail space. So the hotel entrance is down the side here on 3rd Street, where we would consider the side of the building. And it still has its original sheet metal canopy, original doors, original windows, stonework, little faux balcony up there. So really quite a lot there. If we go into the inside of the building, it still has the original lobby with the atrium, Spanish theme, interior design, Casa Grande. So we have the Spanish columns and colonnade up there, and open stair that runs up the entire building with decorative iron railing. So there's still quite a bit there, even though some changes have been made. The Casa Grande was designed by the firm of Hawk and Parr of Oklahoma City. James Hawk, in the first decade of the 20th century, partnered with Solomon Layton. And if you don't know who Solomon Layton was, look him up. Hawk and Parr did quite a few buildings in the 1920s and the surrounding years. A lot of significant buildings in Oklahoma City. Some of these buildings are no longer with us, but many of them are, and those that are all on the National Register. And among the buildings that Hawk and Parr designed were several hotels: the Bessie Hotel in Pittsburgh, Kansas, Will Rogers Hotel in Claremore, and the Biltmore in Oklahoma City. If you were around here in the 1970s, you remember the implosion of the Biltmore. So the point here is I think the architects knew what they were doing. The Casa Grande, built in 1928, the construction cost was $250,000, which is about $5 million today, give or take. Architects Hawk and Parr. The owner and manager was E.M. Woody, who is kind of an interesting character himself, but I don't have time to go into him. It was 4 stories with a partial basement, 60 guest rooms. In practice, 58, because 2 of them were used as an apartment by Woody and his wife and son. It has a banquet room, which is divided into a dining room and a ballroom, coffee shop. There are 4 retail spaces. It was the home of Casa Radio from 1932 to 1950, the appropriately called letters KASA for the Casa Grande. And in this rendering here, you can see the aerial towers on the roof that were added when the radio station was put in there. It was closed in 1968, so it was in operation as a hotel for 40 years. And then it remained vacant for a very long time. The Anadarko Basin Museum of Natural History moved in there about 1985 and occupied a few rooms on the first floor, and they remained in operation there until the early 2000s, and then they moved out. So for the most part, the hotel just sat there from 1968 to present day. The hotel was constructed of fireproof construction design. And in 1928, that meant that the columns, steel columns, are all encased in masonry and plaster. The exterior walls were structural clay tile with plaster on the inside and brick on the outside. And the interior partitions, all the walls between all the rooms, were gypsum furring and partition tile, not wood studs and gypsum board like we use today, or metal studs and gypsum board. These are large gypsum blocks, 12 inches high by 30 inches wide by varying thicknesses with hollow cores. And they were stacked up like bricks with mortar, and that's what was in between all the rooms, separating every room from each other. So totally fireproof. The only thing in the building that would burn are the doors, furniture, things like that, trim. It was advertised as the only fireproof hotel between Oklahoma City and Amarillo when it opened. And because of these partitions, the interior layout of the building is basically the same now as it was when it was built in 1928, because they're not easy to tear down and move. So it's very much the same as it was. Now, in last year, I was hired to prepare a historic structures report on the building. And I have brought a copy with me if anyone wants to take a look through it after the presentation. Shippo also has a copy if you ever want to look at it in the future. And the first thing, of course, I look for is original drawings. Couldn't find any. So I didn't have that resource to rely upon. But we're here to talk about toilets. So let's talk about toilets. The top two floors of the Casa Grande, the third and fourth floor, are the primary guest room floors. And they are arranged around a long central corridor that runs nearly the entire length of the building. Like many hotels during this time period, there are rooms with private bath and rooms without private bath. In the Casa Grande, the rooms with private bath are arranged primarily on the south side of the corridor, south down, up is north here. And the rooms without private bath are on the north side of the corridor. A room with private bath, these rooms are smaller than we expect today. They're about 9 feet across. And they have a bathroom which is about the size of a residential bathroom. You have a floor-mounted flush valve toilet, a wall-hung lavatory, and a bathtub. And every one of these bathrooms has a thick-set terrazzo floor with a cove terrazzo base for easy cleaning. The room without private bath, you get a wall-hung lavatory in the room. And then if you want to use the bathroom, on each floor there were 2 shared guest toilets, one for men, one for women. Blue is for boys, pink is for girls. I use my deductive powers to determine which was the men's and which was the women's. Plus it says on the door, men and ladies. So the men's toilet contains the toilet and the sink. It's here on the left. No bathtub or shower because you don't want people staying in there for a long time if you're sharing the facilities. The women's toilet is smaller. It's like the size of a closet, basically. You can't even open the door without hitting the lavatory. But it does have a window, and it also has a small anteroom with a vanity and mirror. And so that's what the guests without private bath shared on each floor. And those are the upper 2 floors. Go down to the second floor. Now, The second floor is quite a bit smaller than the first floor and the floor plate, because these gray areas you see here are the first floor retail spaces, which have high ceilings. They're 2-story spaces, so they extend up into the second floor. So the actual second floor plate is rather small and toward the right side there. There is a atrium overlooking the lobby. There are, again, rooms with private bath, rooms without private bath, with on the lower side of the corridor, without on the upper side. There's a lounge there. Here's a photo of it, which overlooks the lobby. And I'll just read to you what the newspaper had to say about that on the day the Casa Grande opened in 1928. It said, "The mezzanine floor in the Casa Grande Hotel will be a boon to tired shoppers and women who have only an hour or so to spend in the town. This floor is located above the lobby and maintains a view of the lobby below. It is furnished with comfortable chairs and desks so that one may write or read. Heavy pile rugs in figures of taupe, red, and green cover the mezzanine floor. It is very cheerful and resting, and one imagines that it would revive the most fagged spirits." Now, on this floor, there is only one shared toilet, and that is a ladies' toilet. I'm just speculating now. We have these 2 rooms without private bath here. Perhaps they reserved those for female guests and rented those out to the female guests. If they rented to male guests, I guess you would have to walk up a flight of stairs to use the toilet. So that's the extent of the toilets on the upper floors. Now we move down to the first floor, the ground floor. And let's see, that's the ladies' toilet on the second floor there, ground floor. This floor contains the lobby, coffee shop. There's a banquet room. There's a kitchen that serves both the banquet room and the coffee shop very efficiently laid out. Several retail spaces, and one toilet on this floor, and it is a staff toilet. I know it's a staff toilet from its location because it's accessed off the vestibule between the kitchen and the banquet room, and because it does not have a terrazzo floor like every other toilet room in the building. All those shared guest toilets that we talked about on the upper floors, they also have terrazzo floors, by the way. So that's all that's there. So if you're going to a function here in the banquet room, dining, dance in the ballroom, what you would do is you would exit out the only door that comes down here. And there we go. And there, right at the top of these stairs here, there's also an elevator there, which, by the way, the original elevator is still there. And you go down to the basement. And down a short little corridor, you find a multi-fixture men's public toilet. That toilet, again, I know it's the men's because it says men on the door. Also, it has a space for urinals. They're not there anymore, I don't think. There's a big steel box bolted to the wall where they would have been, which I never got to look underneath that. It has 4 stalls, 2 lavatories, space for 2 or 3 urinals in there. And also a terrazzo floor with a terrazzo cove base, so very nicely fitted out. And so that's all the toilet rooms in the building that I found. Going through the whole thing, that was it. And I thought, wait a minute, something's missing here. Where's the women's toilet? Where's the multi-fixture women's public toilet? There must have been one. Where is it? So I started looking for it. Like I said, it didn't have drawings, so I had to just go by the evidence of what was there in the building. And the first place I looked was the place where I would have put it, which was back to back with the men's toilet, sharing the plumbing wall. And here's the space behind the men's toilet. As you can see, there are 3 large electrical panel boxes on that wall. There's also the water main comes in here. That's the water main coming in. There's a big water meter sitting right there on the floor. And so it's pretty obvious that there was never a toilet there. So then I started looking around at the other spaces in the basement. So I thought it'd probably be in the basement somewhere. Well, because the men's toilet's there. And there wasn't any, I couldn't find any place where there were holes in the floor where toilets would have been mounted, plumbing coming out of the wall where the sinks would have been. I thought, wait a minute, every toilet room in the building, public toilet, has a terrazzo floor. If I find a terrazzo floor, I will have found it. Now, the floor of the basement was covered with dust and debris and everything, but I found a broom and I started sweeping around here and there and looking and looking and looking. No terrazzo anywhere, all concrete. So then I thought, well, maybe it was somewhere on the first floor. But no, every space is accounted for. I know that was a coffee shop. I know that was a lobby. I know that was a banquet room. I know that was a kitchen. This is all from the evidence and newspaper accounts. I know these were retail spaces. City directories told me that. This space next to the lobby here, which right there, was a barber shop originally, and in the 50s was a ladies' dress shop. So there was just no place that I could find where that women's public toilet could have been, and I knew there must have been one. So at this point, I was stumped. I was stymied. I thought this would have to be an unsolved mystery. I didn't know what to think of it. But then I threw a Hail Mary. Sitting at the computer one evening, I just typed in women's toilets in 1920s hotels. And I came up with some hits on the history of the toilet, which were kind of interesting, but didn't answer my question at all. And then I found a link to the Portal to Texas History. And the Portal to Texas History has a collection of architectural drawings from David S. Castle, who practiced architecture in Abilene, Texas in the 1920s, and who designed a dozen or so hotels. And I thought, oh, this might show me something where that toilet room would have been located that I'm looking for. So some of these hotels are small and didn't have the public facilities like banquet rooms and such. And some of these drawing sets were incomplete. But there were 3 hotels that were comparable to the Casa Grande, built at the same time, late 1920s, same region of the country, all these in Texas, and had banquet rooms and coffee shops and such. So I said, no, I thought, okay, let's look at these. Let's see what other hotels did. Where was that toilet room that I'm looking for in these other hotels? So going through here, the Birch Hotel, which, where is that? That's in Breckenridge, Texas. And the Birch, this is the upper floors, typical guest room floor of the Birch. The Birch also had rooms with private bath, rooms without private bath. They only had one guest toilet on each floor, so I presume it was unisex, unless they segregated the sexes by floors, but I don't think that would work if you had a couple staying there. Then going down to the first floor of the Birch, there is one multi-fixture men's toilet there. And it has a couple of stalls, 3 stalls, some urinals, lavatories. No women's toilet on that floor. We go up to the second floor now, and there are a couple of toilets there. There's a men's toilet and a women's, but the ladies' toilet off of a lounge there has one toilet, one lavatory. And through all the drawings of the building, which are complete, that's it. That's the only women's public toilet in the hotel. I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting. Let's take a look at another one. So this is the Hilton Hotel in Abilene. This hotel, all the rooms had private baths, so it must have been a higher-end hotel. And we go down to the first floor, a lot of retail space, like the Casa Grande, big lobby. No toilet rooms on that floor. Down into the basement, now we have a large multi-fixture men's toilet room in the basement. We also have several toilet rooms for staff in the basement. No women's public toilet down there in the basement. So let's go up to the second floor where the banquet room is, a very large banquet room. We have lounges, men's lounge, ladies' lounge. There's a small men's toilet off to one side there, a single fixture toilet. And we go back here through the ladies' lounge and the ladies' rest room, which was literally a place to rest. And then off of that, there's a small toilet with one lavatory and one water closet. And that's it in the whole building. So 2 is a coincidence, 3 is a trend. The Schauerbauer Hotel. This one also had all rooms with private bath, no guest shared toilets. First floor, there's a multi-fixture men's public toilet. And there's a couple of toilets for the staff, but not for the public. Second floor, where we have a big banquet hall, lounges. There's a little tiny men's toilet there off of the smoking room. I assume that's a men's toilet because the smoking room, that's the man cave. And then, again, you have the ladies' lounge and a ladies' rest room. And then off of that, one lavatory, one toilet, and that's it. So, looking at the Casa Grande, it fits right in. There's the Casa Grande men's toilet, 4 water closets, 2 or 3 urinals, 2 lavatories, ladies' toilet, 1 water closet, 1 lavatory. So, going back to the second floor of the Casa Grande, that toilet there, that's it. That's what you got, ladies, right there. So the solution to the mystery of the case of the missing ladies' toilet was that it wasn't missing at all. It was never there. What I was looking for wasn't there. I was so sure there had to be a multi-fixture women's toilet because there was multi-fixture men's toilet, because that's what my 21st century or late 20th century brain and all my training as an architect tell me had to be there. But this building built 100 years ago, not like that. They didn't do things the same way we do them today, and that's a trap we can fall into, thinking with our 21st century minds and when we're looking at these old buildings. So I could stop the presentation right there, but I'm not going to. You answer one question and you get 3 more, right? So the first question, which anyone who's had a small child at home would know, is why? Why did they do it that way? Well, the prevailing, I think we have to look at the times. We have to look at put it in context. And the prevailing social situation, truth, whatever you want to call it, was back 100 years ago or more, women stayed at home. Right? Men went out and worked. They went to job sites and offices and factories. Women stayed at home and did the cooking. Men traveled. Men stayed at hotels. They were traveling salesmen. Women stayed at home, did the cleaning and the washing. Men went to conventions at hotels. Women stayed at home and took care of the kids. Those were the days. Oh, did I say that out loud? Now that's a gross generalization. Of course, there were women who worked back 100 or more years ago, but the job opportunities were rather limited. Nurses, secretaries, maids. Of course, women did travel, but not in the numbers that men traveled. But the 1920s started changing that. And it started in the year 1920 with the ratification of the 19th Amendment. The automobile became ubiquitous in the 1920s. In the early part of the 20th century, it was the plaything of the rich. But Henry Ford made it affordable to the middle class. Automobiles were everywhere and provided greater freedom and mobility for everyone, including women. Things were changing in society. hemlines went from the ankle to the knee. And for the first time, maybe forever, women were throwing off decades, centuries of repression, and we're partying. And we guys didn't know what party animals you women were. As exemplified by the iconic flapper. But it would seem that with all these changes going on, and women getting out more, and socially such, that the architects of the day were slow to respond to that. I think they were falling into the "this is the way we've always done it" trap. And it took a woman to point out the folly of that. So the second question you may ask, but what about the building code? Yeah, to which I would respond, good question, person who asked. So the short answer to that question is, what building code? Okay, I could do a whole half hour on building codes. I don't have the time, so this is going to be very brief. Building ordinance has been around since before America was a country. The early codes were enacted by large cities and were concerned with fire safety, and were usually a reaction to things like the Chicago fire in 1871 and such. In 1905, the National Board of Fire Underwriters did publish a recommended building code, which was kind of the first national building code. There, a bunch of insurance companies got together because it's in their best interest for buildings not to burn down. And there's nothing, however, in that code about toilets. It's all fire safety. Building codes as we know them today arose in the 20th century. Now today everyone uses the international code pretty much. If you've been around as long as I have, you remember when there were 3 predominant codes in the country being used. The Boca Code, which originated in the Northeast. Boca was formed in 1915, so before the Casa Grande. They the purpose was to provide a forum for the exchange of knowledge about building safety. But they didn't publish the first code until 1950, well after the Casa Grande was built. Southern Building Code, formed in 1941, didn't publish until 46, well after the Casa Grande was built. Now the ICBO formed in 1922, and they did publish a code in 1927, the year before the Casa Grande was built. But these codes took a while to be enacted around states and municipalities, so I very much doubt if it was in effect in Oklahoma in 1928 when the Casa Grande was built. It takes a while. But just for fun, let's take a look at what they have to say here. And every building shall be provided with at least 1 toilet. Every subdivision where both sexes are to be accommodated shall be provided with at least 2 toilets and shall be conspicuously marked 4 women and 4 men, and not less than 1 toilet for each 15 persons, or a major fraction thereof. So they were recognizing the need for this, but you notice they don't say they have to be divided equally among the sexes. So the Casa Grande, I don't know if there was any code in effect when it was built. I couldn't find anything. There may have been. I'm sure Hawk and Parr met the code to get it built. One other thing, today the Office of the State Fire Marshal is the one that oversees the building codes and inspects the buildings and reviews the plans and such. Anyone care to guess when that office was established? Yeah, you got it, 1964, 65. So it wasn't around back then. So, you know, they were building it, I guess, the way they always had, and if there were any codes that didn't address this issue adequately, so that's how they did it. So, third question, last question, why didn't they change it? The Casa Grande was in operation for 40 years, 1928 to 1968 as a hotel. Why didn't they go in there and renovate and put in a women's toilet room? And the answer to that question is, I don't know. I have no idea. No idea whatsoever. So I will leave you where we started and just say that Sherlock Holmes was right again.